Well, hello and welcome everyone to the Flying Cow, the live stream here on the Flying Cow. Basically, I just pull in one of my friends and we just talk about whatever we want to. I of course am the Flying Cow himself, Clay Johnson, and here with me today is my friend and sometimes co-host on some various podcasts, Hannah Keefer, the chart master herself. Hannah, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Excited to be here. I've seen the live streams mentioned sometimes, but never get to hop in and watch. So I'm excited to be on this end of it now.
Well, there you go. I mean, it doesn't help that you are on the West Coast,
Couple hours back, yeah.
Which is why we're actually doing this a little later than normal. But I'm still awake. So I mean, it's not that late here. It's only like 9.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
So yeah, just chilling out, and this way, all of the anybody that we might have on the West Coast, it's like perfect time for that.
There you go.
Just about. But yeah. So you and I have a show coming up. Talked about it with Jack last time, but literally tomorrow, the first episode of the Academy will be dropping. It is the first review of the first 5 films in our discussion of 1930, the year 1930. And in that we kind of break down why we chose 1930. It's kind of part of a project that you do and things like that. But I don't think that we actually discuss why you do this project, because you told us that it's just a thing that you decide to do. You just pick a random year and then just decide to watch 100 movies from that year, which, I mean, I'm just like, 100 is a lot of movies, especially from a year like 1930. Like, are you having a hard time just finding things?
Part of my criteria for what I'm watching from 1930 is really just, can I find it?
Yeah.
And so I had a list of some that I was really trying to look for. There are a couple that were Oscar nominated that I'm still trying to get a hold of that I have not been able to find anywhere.
Yeah.
So there have definitely been times where I've honestly, about half the time I have a stash of like 5 or 6 that I've got coming up, and then I'll go to YouTube and be like, okay, search for 1930 movie and see what's available there, or what's available on archive.org, which has been really interesting. Like, sometimes I find stuff that is unexpected or surprising, or it's like, what even is this? Where did this come from? But yeah, no, I don't remember exactly why the project started. It was something that I'm sure it was a discussion that I was having in the Flick Charters movie group, where I have most of my movie discussions, where they were going through talking about how many movies they'd seen from each year. And so I was always surprised, looking back, as someone who I think of myself as a fan of older movies. And I would always look at, some of these older years and be like, oh, I only have like 8 from this year. Now, granted, I like 5 or 6 of them very well,
right?
But there's like a whole lot that I'm not seeing, and so I just thought that one way to kind of tackle this might be year by year. And so so I don't necessarily just in case people were really worried about this, I don't necessarily watch a full new 100, but if I think with 1994, I think I had
you
seen,
just want to make sure that overall you've seen 100. Okay.
Yeah. So I think I only had to watch 50 for 1994.
I was about to say, why 100? Why is 50 not enough? Because especially in a year like 1930.
Yeah.
Like we said, that's a hard number one. There weren't as many commercial films being produced at that time. And then the number of ones that survive and are able
That's
to
the big
find is
thing, is
even
that a lot of them are
smaller.
lost. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100 was kind of part when I would look at my chart and what I'd seen, usually
Mhm.
the upper echelons of years where I'd seen a ton of movies were right around 100.
Right
And I
around.
think like
Okay.
2012 for some reason, I like just went all in on 2012 and have like 105 movies in the list. And
Okay. Are
you know,
those good ones?
a lot of them, not all of them.
Yeah.
When you watch 100, you watch some very good ones and some very bad ones, and a lot of in between ones that you forget about. But
Yeah.
it's been really cool to kind of see the trends. 1968 was fascinating. That was my first one because
Right.
it's like it's like right on the cusp of new Hollywood, right coming out of the golden age, and so we
Well,
have
what's
these big
interesting.
musical and Western Technicolor things right up against like
Yeah.
very first Scorsese and that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Well,
Yeah.
what's interesting about 68, because I think you revealed in the first episode that was the first year that you started with. And what I find so fascinating about that is that it was literally the year that the production code ended.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
So,
like
I mean,
right away things were happening.
right. So a lot of like the Oscar films and stuff are still definitely in that. I mean, towards the end of that production code era. I mean, I think the Oscar winner of that year was Oliver.
Yes.
So definitely still fit in that production code kind of mold.
Mhm.
But one of the reasons that the production code ended was because you know more and more films were coming out that were basically pushing against the production
Mhm.
code, and basically it was just like, this isn't working anymore, let's do
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah, 60 was fascinating because
Yeah.
yeah, I think first Martin Scorsese, first Brian De Palma,
Oh
first Peter
wow, okay.
Bogdanovich. Like
Yeah.
it was really like all these big names, and I was like, oh, first Miyazaki was from 1968,
Oh.
like a little one that he worked on animating and like helped with the story for.
Oh, okay, sure.
So it was really cool to see these early filmmakers
Yeah.
kind of starting and really pushing. Like the first Peter Bogdanovich film is a film that's really delving into like psychology of a killer, and it's based around like the Texas A&M shootings that had just like
I was
happened.
gonna say
Targets.
Targets, that's the
Yeah.
one. Is that Boris Karloff in that?
He's in it briefly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um
because it was basically because Harvey, the guy that did a bunch of like the cheap movies or whatever. I can't think of the
Roger
guy's.
Corman.
Roger Corman, thank you. I don't know why I was thinking Harvey. Roger Corman, yes. Roger Corman basically gave Peter Bogdanovich the film because it was basically like bits of a film that he had been working on
Mhm.
previously, and they were like, if you can do anything with this, go for it. And
Yeah.
he did. He put that together
Yeah.
out of that. So yeah.
Yeah. So that was interesting. And then 1994 was less interesting. That was the year of the big bloated biopics. Was the big, it was all very lush, and we had lots of like, it was big and extravagant. It was Legends of the Fall and Wyatt Earp
Right.
and
Yeah.
most of which I did not care for. And then 1930 has
Sure.
been fascinating because again, it's like right on the cusp between silent and talkie.
Yeah.
And we have all these early films from other countries have been really cool to watch.
Mhm.
These silent films from 1930 from France and from Russia and
Yeah,
Soviet
the
Union and all that.
Ukraine and
Yeah.
yeah, different
It's
things
been
like
just
that. Yeah.
fascinating. So yeah, so it's very cool to watch a whole bunch at once because you really start kind
Yeah.
of seeing the patterns and what kind of is what's driving the movie industry at that time. So I really
Right.
like lumping it all together and kind of I feel like I'm, I feel like I can give more thoughtful answers on it because I can see more where it fits in the scheme of that year.
Sure. Sure. So like where are you on your watch of 1930 right
I'm over halfway.
now?
Let
Okay.
me pull up my list. I think I just the last one I watched. I'm at 59. I
Okay.
I just watched Men Without Women, which is a really weird title because it is Men Without Women, but like it's just because it's a submarine adventure story. So, there's like no connection.
So it's like there's no girls here.
Yeah, well, and they don't they mention
that's
it
the same
like
for a lot of places.
They really don't mention that. It's just like
Right.
so I just kept waiting for like women to be mentioned. It's
right?
Just, no, they're just trapped on a submarine, and I'm like, okay. Very, very strange choice of title.
Yeah.
Clearly trying to market it to an audience who was like, "Oh, let's watch this movie."
Yeah, Men Without Women. They are all very, very sad.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when we put together our list for the Academy, which we talked about last time, were there any on there that you were like, "Ooh, I'm excited about that," because I haven't seen that one, or were they all pretty much like, "Oh, I knew that one. Oh, I saw that one." Or...
The only two I hadn't seen were your and Jack's host picks.
Okay.
And Monte Carlo, which was yours, had been on my list. A friend of mine who loves old movies was like, "I think you'll really like this," and I did.
Yeah.
And then Unholy 3 ended up on my list as well, but I hadn't watched it yet.
It ended up on my list.
It did. It was on my list. So both of them were ones that I knew I wanted to watch down the line. I think I maybe even already had both of them downloaded.
Okay.
So I was like ready to watch them both.
Right.
But I hadn't gotten to them yet. And so that was exciting. Getting to choose my own was tough. Like trying to figure out what do I do. So there were a couple that I was bouncing back and forth between, and we'll have to talk about that when we get there.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely have a particular type. Like when Jack and I were trying to remember what your film was about, I was like, I'm sure that it's some sort of, fun musical. And I don't know about fun, but
it's a weird one.
I'm sure it's some sort of like musical, somewhat comedic, somewhat, something. And when we looked it up, that was exactly what the description of it was like a musical comedy.
So the one that I debated was Outward Bound, which is not that, but it's but it's very theatrical. It's this it's sort of it's all these people who are on a boat together and on like a cruise together. And as they start talking, they realize that maybe they all have died and they're heading toward the afterlife.
Oh, interesting.
And it was I really liked it. It did not go at all where I expected it to, but so that was the other one. So again, very theatrical, very I think it was a play. I think Leslie Howard was in it, and I think he was in the original show. Madam Satan goes through some genre changes.
Some interesting stuff. Okay.
There's the last 15 minutes are not where you think that this is gonna go. It changes genres abruptly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, the first episode is going to be dropping tomorrow or tonight, depending on what time zone you're in. But then, we're actually going to be getting together sometime soon, hopefully, to record the next block of these. And, it's definitely interesting. Obviously, we don't want to give anything away because we definitely want people to tune in and listen. But is there a film in particular that we've either already talked about or that we're about to talk about that you are excited to get to or hear us talk about?
One of the ones coming up from this for this next one is the only movie from 1930 that I had already seen.
Okay.
So we have that.
Sure.
As we were chatting before the stream went live, I think we were you mentioned that there was one left that you hadn't watched yet,
right?
And you're like, but none of the others really were doing it for me, which was interesting to me because I think all of the other four are in like my top half of what I've seen so far.
Wow.
The one that you haven't watched yet is the only one that's below because I don't really care about it, so maybe you'll love it. Maybe we're just opposite on this one.
Here's the thing. Yeah, I was about to say we are, but usually I can see it coming because when we were on the opposite sides of Pulp Fiction, I expected
it was not
you
my
to
vibe.
be exactly, and but yet you and I were on the same page and we're sparring against Jack when it came to Muriel's Wedding. So yeah, there are definitely things that we disagree on, but there's also things where we definitely come together and have a very similar sensibility about.
This may be a fun fighting week in the episode where I'm like,
I was about to say,
these 4 that you don't like are the best ones. The best ones in this whole 15 section set.
I will say of the ones coming up in the next group, there was only one that I actively was just like, I don't like what this is saying. I don't like the idea of this. The others, I was just like, I'm having a hard time getting on this wavelength,
which is
kind of
fair.
thing. Yeah. Whereas, in the last group, there were a lot that I enjoy. I mean, there were definitely some that were a little worse than others, but but yeah,
and
definitely.
I think we had flip-flopped there because I think the first one was the one where like I think I didn't like as I might be misremembering what we talked through, but I think there were none that I like really, really loved, but several that I thought were fun.
Okay.
But like was kind of mediocre on this. And this one, the ones coming up, I'm like, oh, I'm more excited to talk about these. So this will be interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll see where we go.
Definitely going to be interesting. Yeah. I'm interested to see, where we land on this next group as well as the last group. And then, where this thing is going to end up. I mean, I will say I already feel like I might like in my head, I think I might know what I would put as like the number one, but that might change in the next group or even after I watch the next film. But I'm you don't seem to be that optimistic.
I think honestly, I think the one that's probably going to stay at the top is probably the one that I'd already seen, the one that I already seen and really loved. Sure. That one's probably still going to. I haven't rewatched it in a long time, so I'm gonna have to rewatch it and see if it still resonates, still works for me. Yeah. But I haven't found as many that I super love from 1930. Okay. I think I'm excited to talk about Madam Satan when we get to that. But yeah, there have been a lot that it's been a year of movies that I thought were interesting and fascinating to watch, but more historically interesting than that I was like super drawn into the storytelling. There've been some of those, but definitely not the big ones for the most part.
Right. Yeah. Well,
I mean, no, there is one coming up that I take that back. There's one in the last round that really, really got me. And I was like, this is that might be up in the top, like top 2 or 3.
All right. Yeah, I'm excited to get there. So I will say if you're listening to this and this conversation sounds interesting, make sure to check out the first block of the first group of the Academy 1930, which will be coming out 12 o'clock Eastern time.
Soon.
Very, very soon. Very soon. Check that out. And speaking of things that we agree on, I think that actually transitions pretty well into the other topic that I wanted to bring you on for, because I think it was like, if not the very end of last year, it was like one of the last couple of days of last year, I watched a movie and at the exact same time saw a post about the same movie.
It was a December release. Or like the 26th.
Yeah. And I remember it being so well. I think I might have seen the post right before I put the movie on. And just thinking like, oh, well, Hannah really likes this one. So, again, sometimes we agree,
who knows what that
disagree.
Means?
But also it was a musical. So I was like,
so they must do the musical numbers well.
Well, except I will say, I was about to say we often agree on musicals, but you also really liked Cats. So
I like Cats in a weird way, but yes, I don't use Cats as a measure of what I typically like. It's its own beast. It's like the Napoleon Dynamite, where like Netflix can't predict. That's
I'm pretty sure that you would not have listed Cats as your number one from that year.
No.
No. Whereas you did list this movie as your number one, and I just remember thinking, I'm probably not going to like it that much, but I'm sure it'll be pretty good. And I remember watching this movie and just tears in my eyes with my family, and I look around and like I can tell that they're like enjoying it. Like nobody's getting up and leaving, but like I can tell no one is having the experience that I am currently having with this movie. No one else is experiencing the transformative, deep thing that I currently am right now.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm pretty sure that Matilda the Musical from Netflix is my favorite movie of 2022. And it was. I will say, there were a few movies from last year that I had been looking forward to seeing that I had not seen yet.
Yeah.
I have seen since, but I would still put this as my number one. I mean, it's a little more crowded at the top than it used to be, but I would still put this as my number one. Would you say the same?
I think so. I'm trying to think of anything that surpassed it, and I don't think anything from that year has.
Yeah, I think the only thing
the closest, I think the one that's battling it up at the top the most is probably Everything Everywhere All at Once.
See, I would say that's a solid like number 3 for me. I think the closest this came to knocking this off was Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, which
I did just have to check. So my top film of 2022 that I watched this year was After Sun, which yeah, I still think Matilda's ahead because After Sun is too devastating to watch more than once. But
yeah, I mean I haven't seen it, but I mean sounds
it ended and I was like, I just want to sit here and like cry in the dark for an hour.
Yeah, and see that's the thing. In order for me to call something my number one, it does have to have a certain amount of rewatchability.
Same. That's that's a huge piece of it for me.
Yeah, like I think in 2017, now it was before I saw Get Out, which now I'd probably say it's tied. But my number one from that year was The Big Sick, which I have seen multiple times since then. I love that movie. And then I think 2019, my number one was Little Women, which I haven't seen again since then, but I would watch it anytime. I just haven't put it back on yet. But I have already watched this movie twice just because I was like, was I just like, did it just hit me in the right moment?
Was it just a weird moment? But yeah.
Right. And I put it on, after telling a friend of mine about it. I was like, I think it's really good. I watched it the first time and it made me cry and I thought it was really good. I think it's my number one, but I don't know. I'm going to watch it again. And afterwards I was like, I think I might have cried more this time.
Now I have to ask, were you familiar with the original show, or was this your first introduction to that?
It was the first time I had seen the musical version of Matilda. Obviously, I was aware of the story of Matilda, and I've said this before on the live stream. That's one of the reasons that I think it kicked my butt so much, is because I knew the story of Matilda. I understood the story of Matilda. I did not expect the story of Matilda to make me cry, but it did several times. And in fact, every time I watch it, it gets me in the same places and new places. And I'm just like,
Quiet, man. I cannot listen to Quiet without like, it was one of my for those of you who don't know me, I do a thing where I solicit suggestions of songs from people and then put them all on a playlist and then listen over and over again, kicking my least favorite off every time until there's a champion. Quiet won one year, and it was one that I already knew, but I still cannot listen to that without tearing up. Like that it just captures that emotion so beautifully, and I'm just like, I can't sing along with it. I can't listen to it. I will cry.
I was about to say that there have been times that has gotten stuck in my head, and I'm like, this can't stay in
no,
my
I
head.
can't do this.
Oh my God, this can't stay in my head.
Exactly. Oh man,
I don't have enough moisture in my body for this. But yeah, it's just, such a, but yeah, so like I said, I had not seen the musical version. I would really, unfortunately, I think the only Roald Dahl books I ever read were James and the Giant Peach and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think part of it was that I just didn't know a lot of the other ones existed, you
Yeah.
know, and I mean, part of it was that I didn't seek out to find out what else he wrote.
Yeah.
But you know, part of it also wasn't being pushed, you know, because the Danny DeVito film, or Mara Wilson, Danny
Yeah.
DeVito, Rhea Perlman, that film didn't come out until I was a little older. And you know, I remember watching it thinking that it was cute or whatever, but not really like latching onto it. And you know, like I said, I'd never seen the musical. I would absolutely love to now. Especially, you know, because after this one came out, I started listening to the musical soundtrack. There is a soundtrack for the Netflix one. I don't think it works as well as it does as a movie, as a soundtrack, but it still, you know, is pretty decent. But the musical soundtrack is just
So good.
it's really good. And honestly, there are parts of it that like I like I think my favorite just moment from one of the songs is, I mean, it's such a long song, but I really think it's from that first bit.
The miracle,
but it's
the long one.
yeah, okay, and it's the bit from the doctor.
Yeah, where it's like every
most
child
common
is,
thing in life is life. That and the bit that comes after it. I'm not going to sing the whole thing.
Yeah.
I just love that moment. It's so good. And I mean, in the musical, they do it like 3 or 4 times, but in the movie, they only do it the once. And I'm like, oh, that part's so good.
we could have had more.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, you obviously did you like see the musical like performed somewhere, or did you like how were you introduced?
I had the exact opposite introductions you had. I had read the book, had not seen the movie.
Okay. So have you seen the Danny DeVito one yet?
I have not.
You haven't.
It's
okay.
Not. Like, I didn't love the book. It's the Roald Dahl books are always a little mean-spirited for me.
Because it's Roald Dahl. He's a mean-spirited man.
Like, and so if you're willing to, like, you can kind of go along on the, like, you have to be in the right mode for this. And what's fascinating about the musical version of Matilda is that it's like not at all that, like, it doesn't do that at all for me. Like,
I was about to say this
it's a completely different tone, and it latches
very hopeful.
Yeah.
To the point, I mean, honestly, that's what I love about it so much. I mean, I think I've actually mentioned it on the live streams. What I connect to so much in this is that when you really break it down, the story of Matilda is basically about 2 survivors of abuse.
Yeah.
That come to find home in each other.
Yeah.
And to me, that is such a beautiful idea that, I mean, it's hard not to, you know, feel emotional about that.
And then I saw the Broadway production. On my honeymoon, Jacob and I went to New York, and we're like, we're going to see a bajillion plays. We're going to see all the shows.
Yeah.
And Matilda was a last minute get. It was, we got like lottery tickets for it and stood in the rush line. Yeah. And, was just, I was blown away by it. It was so fun and so clever and so smart. In the stage version, I don't know if you've seen any of the videos of the production, but on, When I Grow Up, they have swings and they're swinging out over the audience during that song. It's really, really beautifully done. And we watched it and we saw it and we're like, oh man, I'm so glad we got to see that one. And I would totally watch it again. I think the music does such an amazing job of really, really humanizing these characters in a way that Dahl doesn't do. Dahl dealt in archetypes and tropes, sometimes in very damaging ways. But even at his best, like it was these tropey characters. Yeah. And everything was a little bit, and there's still some of that in the musical, but it treats them like we get, especially with Matilda and Miss Honey, we get these great like internal dialogues where there's more to them than their tropes. Yeah. Like Miss Honey's song, My House is Beautiful. Like all of a sudden we get this insight into her brain and how she processes things. And so good.
Yeah. And I will say in this version of it, Lashana Lynch is phenomenal in this movie. I think if I had to pick a single MVP, aside from Alicia Weir, who plays Matilda, I would say Lashana Lynch is by far the breakout for me.
Yeah. And I'm always so hesitant to recommend musicals with child leads, because that's such a mixed bag. You never know what you're going to get. But I have yet to hear a Matilda that I have not been impressed with. Like, I mean, and I don't know if the songs are written especially well for, I mean, the songs are written especially well, but I don't know.
Right.
But I don't know if they work really well with that.
Child's voice in mind, obviously.
Yeah. But like I have yet to see or listen to a Matilda where I'm irritated by the childness of it, which happens a lot with other child-led musicals.
I was about to say, when I first listened to the Broadway cast recording, like obviously the voice of the child in that is different than what I had heard from Alicia Weir in the Netflix version. But I was like, it's still good. It still works. It's still, fits what's going on here. I will say what does disappoint me a little bit is the fact that I believe that I actually had opportunities to go see this musical and didn't, because I just remember thinking, I don't care about Matilda.
Yeah, like it's not one that you would expect to be the one that you would sit in the theater and cry. Like you don't expect Matilda to be that show.
The only thing I could think of was, the Mara Wilson film, which again, like I said, is fine. Sure. But when I have the choice between that and going to see The Band's Visit, which is one of my all-time favorite, that's the one I'm going to choose, so yeah, I mean, now if I had the opportunity, I would definitely go see it, but I have less opportunity now.
Yeah, it is licensed now, so like I'm sure you can see a lot of less great performances, but there might also be but that also means that maybe there are, there might be professional theaters out there, or theaters for kids that do not with kids necessarily to be in, but that produce for children, that might do some really quality versions. So now that it's in licensing, you might have more of an opportunity than when it was only Broadway in the West End.
We'll see. Yeah. So, I mean, I do want to kind of dive into, this version of it. Like, is there anything particular about this Netflix version that you particularly latch onto that you think, obviously, the stage show works, but is there anything particularly about this version that you're like, oh, I really liked how they did this. It really made this part work?
A lot of times I find that when if you're adapting stage shows that are really good in and of themselves, a lot of times just what you have to do is just not screw it up. And you can screw it up in a lot of ways by casting people who cannot sing. Or sometimes you do it in a way where you're like, sometimes they do like, they shy away from choreography, or they shy away from captivating visuals or anything that seems too stagey or too fantastical, because they like want to like ground it in reality. And 90% of the time that, sometimes that can work. You can make some adjustments for it to work, but Matilda did not need that. Matilda needed to be this, and I loved right from the beginning, right from when the babies are singing and like we start with these bright, striking images. And one of the things that I loved so much about the original is that had this, its choreography was incredible. And I really loved that there were so many moments for that choreography to really shine, especially there at the end. Man, that final bit with revolting children.
The revolting children number is phenomenal.
I mean, so good.
To me, that's the visual selling point of the whole thing.
Yeah, but I really like how like it reminded me. It's a very different movie, but when I first saw Moulin Rouge, the movie, I really, really loved how it was not afraid to, it really used its visuals to capture the emotion and the style of the music. And it was not worried about logistics. It was not worried about like, why are they dancing on a cloud? It was just like, and it was not even worried about like, what does this cloud mean? It was just like, this is what this song feels like. And I thought that Matilda I had a very similar reaction there, where like the visuals were exactly what I needed to just kind of put me in the full headspace. And I think that's done beautifully with so many of them, but in particular, I think Revolting Children does an amazing job with that. And I think Quiet does an amazing job with that. Like the visuals that they chose for that were exactly, like I could not have articulated a better choice for the things that they were doing.
It's like all white, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's white and like like floating up in the sky,
Yeah.
and like above everything, and like you can look down and see the world below you.
Yeah.
And it was just
That song
beautifully done.
has so many layers
Oh
because
my gosh.
in one way it's like peaceful and I mean quiet, but it's
Mhm,
also kind of heartbreaking
mhm.
because it's really the only sanctuary that she has
Yeah,
is in her mind away
yeah,
from life. And it's just like,
yeah,
oh God, that's devastating.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah.
I will say the moment that got me, and what was crazy is, I saw it coming. I mean, there is if you know the story of Matilda at all, there is a twist that's not really a twist in this.
Mhm.
Um, with that, um, like I said, I saw it coming. There's a parallel that gets drawn that, like I said, I saw it coming, but the moment that it was like actually visually realized, it wrecked me.
Yeah,
And that's the moment when it is confirmed that the story that she's been telling the whole time was actually the story of Miss
yeah,
Honey.
yeah,
And the bit that we had already seen visualized with Matilda playing the young girl is
yeah. Gets
now played
re
by a young Miss Honey.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Oh, like,
I had
and I like I said,
yeah.
I knew it, but the moment that it was actually visually represented, I was
Mhm.
just like, "Ah!"
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it leans into these visual representations in a way that it would be very easy for it to feel overwrought or cheesy or like it was being like a little too on the nose, but I
Yeah.
think it does it so beautifully. Like it rides that line exactly where it needs to be, to the point where it just like makes me cry. and I think it does it really well. And we've gotten better at this over the last couple years. 2021 was a good year for musical movies. But
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
that one
some pretty good
rocked.
ones, yeah.
Aside from Dear Evan Hansen, that one was very good. But
That's true, that was the same year,
that
wasn't
was
it?
that. Yeah, but it was also In the Heights and Tick Tick Boom and Annette
West Side the new West
and West
Side
Side Story.
Story. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a good year. But for a long time we had these musical movies that we were almost like we were afraid to let them be musicals. Like that's how I
Sure.
felt about Les Mis the movie. Like they were
Okay.
like it was full of music, but they were kind of afraid to let it be a musical.
There
And
were a lot of interesting things that there were a lot of things that I was glad that they tried, but I
yes,
think they leaned too heavily into some of them.
Yeah. And
And
I applaud the decision to do something different, to try to do something like I don't think that that's necessarily like I don't even think that that's always a bad choice. I think there are some
right.
musicals where it makes sense. But I really my heart is full when I see a musical that's like, no, we're gonna be a musical. And we're gonna
Yeah.
do musical lighting, and we're gonna do musical choreography, and we're gonna do musical sets. And this is
Sure.
and we're still gonna make you cry because that's
Right.
what we're here for.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I do have to ask. I mean, is there anything in the film that you were like, oh, that wasn't a great choice, or I wish they could have done this a little differently, or ooh, that I actually really liked in the musical and you guys kind of screwed it up? Anything like around those lines?
I
Or
have feelings about the fat suits. Um,
yeah. I mean,
like
I
the
will
the one
say
for the
I
child
don't.
is not only is distractingly terrible.
Yes.
Like his is
Honestly,
really
for
bad.
the first little bit, I didn't realize I never thought he was fat, but
You're-
I didn't realize he was wearing a fat suit.
Yep,
I
yep,
just thought
and
like
it's
his
terrible.
clothes were fitting weird. And
Nope.
then when well, and it's not even a good fat suit. It's
No,
literally
it
like they
is.
just tied an inner tube around his
Yeah, it
waist.
looks absolutely awful.
It's
Oh,
horrific.
and yeah, and so
I will
it's
say
yeah.
I don't think the one on suddenly I
Trunchbull.
can't on Trunchbull, yeah, on Emma Thompson. I honestly thought Emma Thompson was really good in it.
That was
I've heard a
that
lot of
works.
people actually not be thrilled with her performance, but I loved what
I
she
think
did
I
with
think
the
she gave the
character.
performance exactly what it needed.
Yeah.
Like I think she was not afraid to come in and bring the exact energy that she wanted for this role.
Yeah, honestly,
Yeah,
again,
that one
while
bothered
she
me much less.
sure.
It does it I don't love and they there's a little bit where and Dahl does this. Dahl makes his female villains obvious in their villainousness by making them ugly.
Ugly. Yeah.
And that obviously that equates immediately to mannish and fat. And so that carries baggage with it.
Right.
So like not enough that it like kept it from being my number one movie of the year, obviously, but
Yeah.
it's one where I was like, I wonder what opportunities there are to make someone this intimidating character without doing that, or
Sure.
what other ways are there to convey this story, or to convey this thing, because that's only there to make her the villain, to make her ugly and unattractive, therefore she is the villain. And that's a Dahl failing overall. That isn't something that like would necessarily stand out if I didn't know that that's how he wrote every single other villain as female.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, if you've ever read James and the Giant,
James the Giant, she is the
Spiker are disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that came with baggage, but at least like hers at least was she was definitely cartoonified. Like it was a caricature of a person. Sure. And I thought that it mostly worked. And I thought that she did everything she was supposed to with her part. Yeah. But those were the two things that I occasionally got pulled out of the story with. Anytime I saw poor little Bruce's inner tube in his sweater, I was like, really?
Yeah.
Like, that's the way you
honestly,
went with this?
The way they were doing it, I mean, aside from the fact that there were literally lyrics where they were saying nobody's going to make fun of your size anymore.
Yeah.
Other than that, I was like, I don't feel like this character has to be fat. Mm-hmm. Like honestly, I thought the kid did a good job with the role. We could just believe that he just liked eating a lot.
Yeah, that's another piece of it, is that like there's a lot of weird feelings in Roald Dahl books about weight, and that comes through here, even in a way, even where they're trying to make it better. They do make it better, but that still comes through in a way that. That does mean that I don't recommend it to everybody. If that's something that's going to be sitting with you, don't watch that, because they don't do a great job with it. But it's not, they don't, they do a pretty good job of, they don't focus on that as much as they could have.
Well, and
they don't.
I will say they don't focus on it as much as the Danny DeVito film does.
I would buy that.
And I mean, honestly, he's more of a character in this than he is in most other.
He gets to have a personality, which is nice.
Yeah. But I will say the bit that I was like, and again, I haven't seen the musical, so I don't know if maybe they're just taking a cue from the musical. But the song "When I Grow Up," the way that it's at least set up in this film, I'm not a huge fan of, because it is set up like the kids are being picked up by their parents and taken home, and they're singing this song on the way home. I find that distracting for a couple of different reasons. Number one, we know that Matilda's dad knows that the Trunchbull is a horrible person. And so, but because he's also a horrible person, it makes sense. Yes, it makes sense that he is sending her.
You don't want to see these kids with other happy families, because you're like, are you not paying attention to what's happening to your child?
These children are being depicted as being in happy families, other than the fact that they're going to school at this horrible school. And it doesn't seem like a public school. It seems like a private school. And they know how horrible she is, yet they're still sending their children that they supposedly love to this thing. And also so that's troubling to think about. But also just, I feel like the song itself is so aspirational. So to be in a setting of the most happiest that they've been at this moment, to then be thinking of being in a happier place, doesn't have as much punch to me.
Yeah.
If this had like taken place like during like, let's say like a work session, or during like, I can't remember what she called it, but when she took them out in the yard or whatever,
obstacle courses or whatever.
If it had taken place during something like that, like, I mean, if you want to be completely descriptive, like if it had been in the same setting of like the setting of like Annie's It's a Hard Knock Life, You know, and now they're
I can see
thinking
that.
about something aspirational of having power to overcome something when they grow up. It makes more sense.
Yeah,
But I
the
just don't
setting
think that the
didn't
setting makes sense.
the setting didn't totally work for me there. Like, I
Yeah.
still think it's one of my favorite songs in the show. It's
Okay.
top 3 for sure.
Sure.
In the show, it is more. We do not see them with families. It's an abstract
Right.
moment. Like, they're just
Yeah.
out on stage, on an empty stage, just swinging and singing about what they're going to be when they grow up. And I think
Yeah.
you're right. I think that makes more sense because it does. We're not suddenly starting to question, like, hold up, what is going on with their families?
Yeah. It's like,
but-
okay. Because then even at the end, it's like, some of these kids need to be taken out of their homes.
Right. Yeah, and so I think that does become a distracting thing.
Yeah.
The show does avoid that very neatly,
Okay. Yeah.
and just kind of sets it up as like it's not set in a particular space. It's just a visual of kids just thinking and wondering, which I think makes more sense, and is probably why that may be why I was not as drawn to it in the movie.
Sure.
Like, it still sounds gorgeous, but yeah, the setting didn't fully work for me either. But I think that's a good way of articulating maybe what was off for me in that as well.
Okay. I do want to ask you, because again, I haven't seen the musical. Is the librarian that Matilda tells the story to, is she part of the musical? And if so, how much is she in it, more than she is in the movie, or about the same?
She's if I recall correctly, she might not even be in it at all.
Oh, wow,
most of Matilda's sections where she's telling the story are said directly out to the audience.
Because I really liked that character in the movie.
I did too. I thought,
and
that was
I
a good
honestly
choice.
was like, the moments when like Matilda would find a note where she wasn't there, I'm like, no, I like her. Bring her back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the movie did cut 2 songs. The parents each had a song,
Right.
which was heavily
the beginning
to give the child actors a break.
Shorter. Yeah. Oh yeah. The beginning of the film is much shorter than it is in the musical. Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, they stayed pretty faithful to it. The librarian was a much heavier character, but that's again because Matilda's breaking the fourth wall in the stage version. She's telling the audience the librarian might be there briefly at the very beginning, but mostly she's not.
Just to kind of set it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so then we just see her telling the story while they're acting it out behind her. But I think it makes sense as a choice to add it in to add that storytelling narrative, and also it's just nice to add one more person so Matilda doesn't feel as alone all the time.
I will say, though, I also really liked the idea of this character because she's basically this wandering librarian with this wandering, like, traveling library. I'm like, that just, I mean, there's something about that seems very magical.
Yeah,
you know?
I knew somebody who worked for something similar, and it was in a very, very rural part of the country, and like where it was like farmers all spread out, and so far away from the town, and so she would, she had a van, and she had a bookmobile, and would go around and
bring books
do that.
around to children,
but we don't get that anymore, really.
No.
So it does kind of add this. There's an escapism to that too, that she did, almost like she doesn't have to stay and be like infected with the horribleness of the world. She can go back around and come back when she's needed.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, is there anything else about the movie that you wanted to talk about? I mean, honestly, I could pick apart the movie, but I also didn't watch it like immediately before doing this. So
I just want to say I want to give a credit to the person who wrote the music, which I really think stands out, which is Tim Minchin, who is mostly known for doing musical comedy, but he also does some songs. If you listen to Not Perfect, that's a Matilda song right there. And it makes me cry, and it's beautiful. But he has one other show that he's done, and I've listened to it a little bit, not as much, but he did the musical version of Groundhog Day. Which people liked, it just didn't get as much attention. And I was gonna say,
I knew that was a thing, but I hadn't heard a whole lot about it.
Yeah, that was Tim Minchin, and the little bit I heard, he's very thoughtful with the choices that he makes, and clearly very deliberate. And so he does some really fun things with reprises in Groundhog Day as the story is retelling itself over and over again. He gets really fun and clever, finding different ways to show the repetition without actually being repetitive.
Okay.
Um,
Well, that's
and
cool.
on a tiny note, I just want to call out the funness of the school song where they are singing the alphabet in the background, and each letter applies to is they're singing it in the whole song, and so if you listen, you can hear them all of a sudden saying A when they're saying like able, and so like
Right.
it's just a fun little clever thing that we don't get very often in musical theater anymore, and
Yeah.
I loved it was so silly, but I was like, I
Well,
like
yeah, I
this.
mean,
This is fun and creative.
that alphabet song
Yeah.
really is a lot because what's so interesting about it is that, you know, a lot of the letters you really kind of have to stretch because I
Oh
think
yeah.
I think like their L letter L is they're saying the word hell, but because it's in a
This
British
living hell.
accent,
Yeah.
living L,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but that's their L, and I'm just
Yeah. Yeah.
like, but yeah, yeah, lot of creative, you know, playful little things that they're doing
Hmm.
there, but yeah, I mean, I will say I do wish that we got a little bit more of the parents in this version. Andre
I'm with you.
Riseborough and Stephen Graham, I think, do a great job in what we get of them. They are so wonderfully nasty, but in a very fun
I would have
way.
loved to have
Yeah,
the mom has this great song about where she in the musical she's like constantly practicing for like a ballroom dance competition or something,
right.
and
Yeah,
so she has this great song about like it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're super loud, and
yes,
that would have been like I wanted that one like over the credits,
yeah,
like filmed not necessarily. I understand why it doesn't fit in the movie, but
yeah,
I want that as a released extra.
yeah. And you know, in this version, they cut um her siblings. I
Yes.
believe they are in the musical though. Or
She has one older brother who
okay,
doesn't speak. Yeah.
right. Which
Yeah.
is probably why they cut him for the Netflix version because it's like,
Yeah.
you know,
And
doesn't contribute a
the
whole lot.
dad song is
Excuse
mostly
me.
the dad singing, and then every so often the brother will like say the word at the end of the line. And
Oh,
it's like
okay,
and
yeah,
that's
yeah,
it.
yeah,
So like but
yeah,
yeah, it's I mean a part of it is like there is something to be said about showing the contrast that it's not that it makes her parents worse because they're not just horrible parents in general, they're horrible specifically to
to
her.
her. Yes,
Like
yeah.
they're, you know, their older
They
brother her
actually
older
have a
brother is
child
awful.
that they don't mind,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Like and he's a
yeah,
horrible person, but they're like they're fine and nice to him. It's just
yeah,
they're specifically mean to her.
yeah.
So that adds a little bit more of that. But like yeah, so I the parents are fun character roles
Yeah.
and didn't get a lot to do in the movie version, which is okay, I understand. But they are fun if you go see the stage version and get
Yeah,
to see them
I will
get a couple
say
songs.
I do remember when I listened to the soundtrack having a lot of fun with the dad song. Uh
Telly. Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Everything I
Oh, I
learned
know I learned
from
from
Telly.
Telly. Yeah.
Yes,
It's
yes.
very silly. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, good stuff. Well, thank you, Hannah, for coming and talking with me about that because I've mentioned it to people and they've listened to me, but like
People
no,
don't connect with
no,
it and they should. It's so
yeah,
good.
like I said, I was literally surrounded by family, and I could tell they were enjoying themselves, but like nobody else was having the experience that I was
Jacob and I
having.
cried. So
Yeah, well, there you go.
yeah.
There you go. I am not alone.
Mhm.
Well, then I think it's time to go ahead and start wrapping things up. But I will say I've been doing a little thing, and nobody's told me not to do it, so I'm gonna keep doing it. A little game that we like to play to end these out. And that is a little game my sister got me this for Christmas. It's a game called Color Brain. And as you can
Okay.
tell, it is the Disney version of Color Brain. And basically, what it is I've got these little cards that have the name of a movie, the number of a number of colors, and then an item that you have to name the color of.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is we're going to do 5 cards and just kind of see how we do in this. I will say a lot of times we end up tied. I think I've won a few. I don't think I've lost any yet.
Okay.
But we'll see how it goes. So first of all, we're gonna start this off by choosing because I've got two different stacks. So Hannah, would you like to go from stack number 1 or stack number 2?
Number 1.
Number 1. All right, stack number 1 it is. All right, so we're going to start with stack number 1. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull 5 different cards from this. Just randomly pull different cards. All right. Let's see. All right. And all right, so I've got 5 different cards. All right. And now I'm going to tell you the colors that we have to choose from. It's quite a few.
Okay.
All right.
Should I write these down? Would that be helpful?
It might help.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, if you have an idea of the color, you'll know what color it is.
Yeah.
But yeah. Just so you know what I'm choosing for, because I'm gonna do the cards so that you know I'm on the level. All right. So we have purple. We have red. We have black. We have gray. We have white. We have brown. Okay. We have orange. We have blue, yellow, green, and pink.
Okay.
All right. So like I said, that's quite a few colors.
All the basics, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty standard. There's no like fuchsia or turquoise or anything like that. Pretty basic. And so what we're going to do is I am going to, one at a time, name these cards, and you'll have between 10 to 15 seconds. Obviously, if we both have it right away, then we both have it right away. We can just do this. But I will say the movie that it's from, and then I will, tell you how many colors we're looking for, and then the item itself.
Okay, so and I'm identifying how many colors the colors that the item is in the movie.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I do not have good memory. This is going to be tough.
And I will say, just to kind of give it, this was not intentional, but it looks like all of these cards are only one color. So
cool. That'll be easier for me.
I mean, I will say sometimes it's cool for at least some of the later ones to be more than one color, because then if I'm like way ahead, you have the opportunity to catch up. But we'll see.
Well, I'm fully expecting to lose.
Or one of us is way ahead. I don't know why
I do not picture colors
myself.
well.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. All right. So the first item is from Winnie the Pooh, and we are looking for the color of Pooh's shirt.
Okay. Am I like writing it down or just knowing what I'm going to say?
I mean, just know what you're going to say. I'm using the card, so I'm going to show it exactly. So, are you ready? All right. So, 1, 2, 3. What's your color?
Red.
I also said red, and yes, it is red. So that is a point for each of us. All right. So now we're going to go to the next one. Okay. And this is from Pixar's Brave. All right. And again, like I said, these are
Merida's hair.
And the item in question is the wisps. All right. So go ahead. Come up with an answer, whatever it might be.
Sure, I got one.
You ready? All right. 1, 2, 3. These. What's your answer?
I'm guessing white.
Okay, I said blue. All right, let's see.
That's just
blue.
There we go. Cool.
Yeah.
I do not remember that at all.
No?
No, I don't even know what that is. So I was like,
they're those little like like blue flamey things that like lead her different places?
I'll
You don't
believe
remember?
it's in there. I do not remember it at all. Pixar. I
All
don't
right.
do Pixar. This is not my vibe. No.
All right. Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot. There are some Pixar movies that you flat out just refuse to watch.
That's not necessarily on purpose. It just keeps
Yeah.
not happening.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Okay. So, some of these last ones I've just caught glimpses of. They're harder.
Okay. Great.
But let's
Harder than the one
see.
I did not know.
Well, I mean, the first
Yeah.
one was pretty easy.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah,
here we
it
go.
was.
So the movie is Pinocchio. Okay. And it's one color. And the item is the main color of Jiminy Cricket's shoes.
I'm not confident, but I've got one.
I'm also not super confident, but I also have one.
All right.
All right, you ready? 1, 2, 3.
Blue?
Okay, I'm saying black.
Black was my second choice.
Okay, let's see.
But I feel like they might have been blue against his black.
It's yellow.
Oh, well, not
Yellow.
even close. Not even
I will
close.
say my first guess was brown. That would have been closer. I was thinking that when he transformed, he got, or when he got his new suit, that he got black shoes.
Nicer.
But
yeah.
apparently they were
I
yellow shoes.
I remember that it wasn't
with
the
a
same
tux.
color as his jacket.
Oh,
so I was like,
okay.
I don't think it's
Sure.
black. I was like, but I don't think it's bright, and so I was wrong.
All right. So we're down now to the last two. This is from The Little Mermaid. Okay. And this is tough. The item in question is Ursula's nail polish.
I mean, I have a guess, but I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, I also have a guess, but not super confident.
Yeah.
All right, you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, 3, 2, 1, go. What do
Black?
you say? Okay, I'm saying red. All right, let's see. It was red. All right.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, I knew she had the red lipstick, but yeah, she's got very, very red nails on that
Remember
purple
that,
skin.
but I'll believe it.
Yeah.
I told
Black,
you,
I think black would have made
visual is
sense too.
Right. I was like,
Yeah.
I was thinking, drag queen dramatic. So I was like, black
Right.
would absolutely make sense.
But I will say also, though, this was 89. We weren't even in the 90s. This is before like black
We didn't
goth
go full,
nail
we weren't full
polish
goth
was
yet.
really
I guess that's
a
fair.
thing. Yeah.
Campy red would have been the vibe.
Yeah. All right.
That's
So we are down now to the last one. All right. And this is from Peter Pan. Okay. And the item is Tinkerbell's dress.
I'm like 90% sure I know this
And
one.
I keep going back and forth on this one. I think I know, but I really hope I'm not.
I think I know.
I really hope I'm not like transposing this with something else.
I'm like 90% sure, but it could absolutely be something that I have in my mind very solidly as the wrong color. So we'll find out.
Right. All right. So are you ready?
Yes.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
Green.
Okay. I'm also saying green. So let's see. It was indeed green.
I got two. I'll take it.
Very good. Very good. All right. All right. Not bad. Not a bad game. But yes, again, thank you, Hannah, for being here today. It's always fun to talk to you. I actually look forward to talking to you, hopefully sometime soon.
Sometimes
yeah.
we'll talk about our 1930 movies.
Yeah, at some point. But like I said, we will be back next time doing something different, talking to somebody else about whatever we feel like talking about. But until that time, moo.